Today, we discuss all things Pirates baseball with former Pirates reliever and current broadcaster Matt Capps. You're listening to the Bucko Banter podcast brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' 101s, yeah, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates, yeah, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plate, send in case after case. Run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Welcome back, everybody. Joining us now on Bucko Banter is former Pirates reliever and current Pirates broadcaster, Matt Capps. Welcome to Bucko Banter.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Matt, welcome on. We got to meet you last weekend, which was a pleasure at Pirates Fest. It was a good time. Want to talk some Pirates baseball with you, but first, I just want to know what inspired you to get into broadcasting after your playing career with the Pirates and other teams?
Yeah, I don't know that there was anything that inspired me to get into it. Mark Garda, the Pirates director of broadcasting, called me and asked if it was something I'd be interested in. And it's not something I thought about when I was playing, or I thought it would be a post-playing career or opportunity. But when he called and brought it up, there were actually a couple other calls after him. And it's like, well, maybe somebody at some point in time in my career saw that it would be something I'd be good at, or maybe would like to do. But yeah, I mean, right after that first call, I was intrigued. I was interested, wanted to learn more about it, and then got the opportunity with Pittsburgh. And I tell people all the time, of all the jobs I have, it's my favorite. It's probably the best.
Yeah, nothing better than just watching baseball and
Yeah.
talking ball all day. Is there any? We have an incredible team with the Pirates in the broadcast section between the players and Greg Brown and Blanc. Is there anyone specifically that helped you with your broadcast game being new to the organization in this new career?
Well, first off, Greg Brown and Joe Block are two absolute professionals. They make it easy on us. We'll tell them it's their job to make us look good, but they do it seamlessly. Both of them are the consummate pros. They work their tails off. But when I first got the opportunity, I reached out to Steve Blass. I had a good relationship with him when I was a player. And Steve told me one time, like, it's just you and a buddy at a bar watching a game on TV and you're talking about it. Like, that's how you have to make it feel. And, the goal is to make the viewer feel like that third friend sitting there with us. And that's something that's always kind of resonated with me, is we're just having a conversation. I may be the subject matter expert with my past and what I've done, but my partner is pretty knowledgeable of the game as well. And, our job is to try to make it understandable to the passive fan that just, happens to be watching that night, without insulting the fan that is very knowledgeable. Make it fun for both audiences. And, that's what we try to do.
It's funny you say that, because we got to talk to Steve Blass briefly, him and Greg Brown at Chuck Tanner Day, which is up in my hometown of Newcastle, PA. We did like a live podcast there, and it felt like we were sitting out. Adam would probably agree with this. It felt like we were sitting at a bar talking baseball with Steve. Yeah. He was so funny, and it was such a great time. He had a lot of good stories about Chuck. But no, that's great. Before we get into the 2025 season, I want to talk about last year real quick. What are some of the biggest takeaways that you found from this team, being in the booth last year? How did they grow? Did they make improvements from 2023 to 2024? What did you see there?
Well, before I jump into that, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention something about Chuck. I had a good relationship with Chuck, and my wife and I actually had dinner with him quite a bit when we lived down in Bradenton. It seemed like every time we went into the Carrabba's down in Sarasota, Chuck was sitting at the bar, and he'd always come sit with us or invite us over to him. So what a special man. It was. He was awesome. I never got to play for him, but I certainly enjoyed getting to know him post his managerial career. So going into the 2024 season, obviously the emergence of Paul Skeens and Jared Jones, kind of seeing the first two arms and that, I don't know the best way to put it, kind of that run of talent in the starting rotation that we expect to see, that the Pirates have been working to develop. To see those two guys make it into the big leagues was very, very exciting. Kind of saw, not that he needed to solidify himself, but I think in the heart of the order, Brian Reynolds just kind of showing that he really is a dude, and glad to see the organization step up and lock him up long term. Um, yeah, I know it wasn't his first year back, but to see Kutch continue to do what he's done in a Pirates uniform is special. And I think there's more talent here on the major league roster than we've had in a number of years. But talent doesn't always win you ball games. Now we've got to figure out how to put it together. I think Jim Tracy told me one time, excuse me, Jim Tracy told me one time, when you think of a major league season, you break it into thirds. And you're going to win a third of your games and you're going to lose a third of your games. And if you look across baseball historically, almost every team in baseball has won a third of their games and they've lost a third of their games. The difference between the good teams and the not so good teams are that middle third. The games that you're in that you just can't quite win, or the games that you shouldn't win, and you find a way to do it. And I think that's where the Pirates are right now today. Is you look back on 2024, just off the top of your head, you can probably think of 5, 6, 10 games. It's like, man, we had that. We should have won that game. Well, that's a 10-game swing. So now I'm blanking on what our record was last year, but
76 wins, I think. So.
Yeah. So now you're looking at an 86 win team. That's a big difference, and if you go even farther and you think 15 of those, that are kind of in that gray area, if we come out on top in 15 of them, you're looking at a 91 win season, and you're there. You're in the playoffs. Things are looking great. Everybody's happy. It was kind of like when I got traded to Minnesota in 2010. That was really the thing that jumped out the most. Is it's like we didn't play good enough to win this ball game, but we somehow managed to get a lead in the 7th, 8th inning and held on to it, or we walked them off or something like that. Like the games that we were in, we came out on top on. And to me, that's the biggest difference between good teams and bad teams. The blowouts are going to happen, both sides of the equation, wins and losses. Those 1-run games, 2-run games where it's like one big hit or making one pitch is the difference maker. We got to figure out how to be on the other side of that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think part of that, and like you said, the 1-run games, 2-run games, you can count. I mean, when you're saying that, I'm thinking of multiple series at a time after they were on a heater, and then all of a sudden it's a huge swing, and it's a momentum game. After all, it's a long season, but you got to keep that going, especially at the end of the year. Right. One of the strong suits that at least we thought going into the season was going to be the bullpen after 2023. You had Moretta go down after a really promising year last year. You had a down year from Bednar. You had some injuries floating around, so it didn't pan out as well as it could have. You had Chapman, you just lost him. Going into this year, there's a lot of really good arms. I would argue we have a lot of guys that could be high leverage arms going into the year. I like Nicholas's stuff. I like Majinski. I think they're nasty. I think Bednar is going to jump back. But is there anything that you noticed with that group last year, and what do you think about this group going into next year in 2025?
Well, I think for me it's stability. They didn't have that stability last year, and that starts with Bednar in the 9th inning. They were kind of put behind the 8 ball with him getting hurt in spring training, and then kind of a rough couple of first outings, and then I felt like with David, at least in particular, he was trying to play catch up all year, and that's a bad spot to be in, especially as a reliever. You have 1 or 2 bad outings, and the numbers on the year look atrocious. And we can't ever forget that these are human beings with human being emotions. we naturally, we like stability. We like routine. We like to, know there's comfort in kind of knowing the situation I'm coming into or I'm going to be used in. And, when you, when you have bullpens that line up that way, that this is my ninth inning guy, this is my eighth inning guy, this is my seventh inning guy, this is my swing guy that can pitch, can give me 1, 2, maybe 3 innings. And, there's not as much moving around and kind of guessing when am I going to be used here or there, or, when's my number going to be called. That's difficult, the 162 game season to mentally be up for 9 innings for 162. It's impossible. So you look down in close games, your swing guys should know they're not being pitched. So they're relaxed. They're kind of checked out a little bit. And those are the times that they need to check out, and vice versa. In the big run difference games where, your eighth inning guy, your closer is not going to be used, and the team's trailing by 10 or winning by 10, you should look down in the bullpen and they're a little more relaxed. But it's hard to get into that situation when Bednar's hurt. Chapman was used, if memory serves me, I think maybe even in the 5th inning, but the 6th inning some. When he was exclusively with the 8th inning guys, his numbers were better. They were good. So again, kind of going back on that creature of habit when Holderman was in the 7th inning and kind of in that role. And then I know he got hurt a little bit and battled through some things, but I think if everybody can slot in, and I've said it before publicly, you give David Bednar a healthy spring training to get ready, I think he's going to be just fine. I think 25 is going to be fine. Let him get his work in and kind of iron out the kinks and in spring training, and then have a good start to the season. He's going to be just fine. And then who slots 8th, 7th, below that, I don't know. But kind of have it set. Like, this is your job to lose and go out and do your job. And they know it, whether it's Holderman or Nicholas or Majensky or any of those guys. And then, every now and then when a guy's thrown 3 days in a row or 4 out of 5 or whatever it is and needs a day, you have that conversation with him. Like, today you're my 7th inning guy today. You're my 8th inning guy today. Or, Bednar's down. One of you two guys is going to be my closer, depending on matchup, stuff like that. But having that stability and allowing guys to get into that routine, I think will do world of wonders for them.
Yeah, you mentioned stability. I feel like we never had a Holderman, Chapman, and Bednar healthy all at once last year.
Right.
And that was obviously a big factor too. And Bednar was hurt in the spring and he didn't get the proper ramp up. I think it's different for every guy. Like I pitched in college and I know that the mental side of things can be tough, but like, how much do you think for a Bednar who comes in not healthy, not with that full ramp up, how much does the mental side play for a guy like him and his high leverage of a role?
Well, normally with David, not at all. I think he's got that makeup to be a 9th inning guy where when he has a bad day, let it go. With him in particular, he just didn't look all the way through April, really, didn't look like he physically was there. In Miami, I can't remember, his first outing was bad. His second outing was good, I think, numbers wise. I could be backwards on that. But even the good one in Miami in that first series of the year, his split was elevated. His breaking ball was up. The fastball didn't have that life through the zone. And I saw that like all the way through April, maybe even May, where when you think about him in years past, the split's below the knees. The breaking ball's at the bottom of the zone, not middle, upper part of the zone. And for me, that's a physical thing. That's being healthy, being able to get that extension, kind of trusting it, health and timing. And by timing, I just mean separation of the hands in relation to the lower half. And he just never looked in sync. And then at that point, I think it did become mental. Because again, we're people, right? And there's pride in being people and being successful people. And when he looks up in late May and June and sees a 9 ERA on the scoreboard, like there's something in you. It's like, all right, I got to make up for it today. I got to make up for it right now. This pitch, this at bat. And when you start thinking that way, it's not a good place to be. And I feel like he just never was able to get out of that trench. So
Sure.
give him a healthy spring training, and I think he's going to be fine. Like I said, the mental side of it, I don't worry about at all with David. I've been fortunate to get to know him as a person, and um, that's the least of my worries. If he's physically healthy and has a bad outing here or there, he's going to be fine the next night. Give him the ball.
Absolutely. I think one thing we probably don't have to worry about going into this year is the starting rotation. And last year going into spring, there was a lot of question marks.
I'm knocking on wood.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a long year. It's a long season. You can never have enough arms, but we seem to have plenty of arms and plenty of, guys that could be top of the rotation guys. And obviously Paul Skeens, but Jared Jones, Mitch Keller eating up a ton of innings and just being that veteran in the clubhouse. Bailey Falter had an incredible year, made some awesome adjustments with the lower half and working at the top of the zone. And then you got guys like Bubba Chandler on the precipice and Thomas Harrington and Johan Oviedo coming back. A lot of righties in the rotation. I don't put much value in mixing it up that too much, as long as you have guys that you could supplement that coming out of the pen, but it doesn't seem like we have a lot of different looks in the bullpen from the left-hand side. Is that something that you put value in having a rotation with a decent, like a couple of lefties, or would you like them to add some more lefties on the back end to finish out the 5th, 6th, 7th inning?
It's having lefties is certainly nice. And I'm a huge fan of Bailey Falter, by the way. But if during my time I could have a rotation with 5 Kurt Schillings or 5 Pedro Martinez's or 5 John Smoltz's, like, bring it on. Let's go. I don't care if you see similar looks, back-to-back nights. Like, you still got to hit the ball, and that's the stuff will always play. So not having lefty depth doesn't bother me one bit at all. Being at Pirate Fest, it was great to see Johan Oviedo. Physically, he looks great. Not being around, I don't know that I saw him at all last year, but you forget just how physical of a human being he is. He's a
large man,
he's massive.
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
I think it's a luxury. I think it's a luxury the Pirates have right now, having the power type arms that they have. I said it the other day. It really jumped out to me at Pirate Fest too. Bubba Chandler, probably 3 different times walking to me or walking away from me, I thought to myself, there's Paul. His mannerisms, his size, his stature. I haven't seen Bubba pitch since he was 17 years old. I was fortunate enough to be able to coach him a little bit at East Cobb here. I haven't seen him pitch as a professional in person. I have seen some video. The stuff is there. Certainly excited to see him make his splash into the big leagues, hopefully this year and hopefully early this year. But if you can give me a rotation of Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, Mitch Keller. Mitch Keller's been our opening day starter for what, last 2 years or 3 years?
2 or 3, yeah.
There's a lot of teams in baseball that would be more than happy to bring Mitch Keller on as their number 1, number 2. And then give me Bailey Falter and Oviedo. I don't have a ton of expectation for Oviedo this year. Being his first year back from Tommy John, I know it's a roller coaster. There's some ups and there's some downs, and they can be extreme both ways. Going back to the mental side of it, I think he's capable of handling it. I hope he knows that that's to be expected. There's going to be some highs and lows. But it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. If they, piggyback him with maybe a Bailey Falter, and allow, Johan to start to be on the schedule and kind of have his time getting loose and getting ready for the game, and then bring in Bailey, or, if Johan's the number 5 guy, you've got a Majensky following him or somebody like that, and let him slowly kind of ease into his innings. But hey, these are good problems to have arms like this.
For sure. I think that's a theme on this roster. There's a lot of versatility. And when see Oviedo in 2023, he threw like 180 innings. Like he's an innings eater. He's a horse up there. I've also seen him with his power stuff, maybe being able to play a high leverage role at some point if he was cracked out of the rotation. But do you possibly see him? I mean, you kind of already insinuated this, but could you see him playing like a Luis Ortiz role from last year, where he might start middle relief, might throw 3-4 innings here and there?
I could, and that could be their plan. The only, and I don't know his history, so I could be completely wrong on this. Maybe he has some experience pitching out of the bullpen. I would be careful with that and using him out of the bullpen because you may try to get him in for the 5th inning, and we're at home, and the bottom of the 4th inning is 3 up, 3 down, 4 pitches, and he's only thrown 5 with a catcher down. And now he's got to go out onto the game mound and try to compete. Coming back from Tommy John, you get in a big league game, the adrenaline's running, you're fired up, and things are moving pretty fast. I would hesitate to get him out of the bullpen, at least initially, unless he has some experience in the past doing that and knowing what it takes to get ready. I think he would be better suited health-wise and longevity for him to be the starter, and then somebody else piggyback off of him.
I think he has some experience with the Cardinals and the bullpen, but I feel like once you go to that starter role, and he was pretty successful there, it's going to be hard to convince a guy to go back unless it's absolutely necessary. But we mentioned Luis Ortiz. He had a great year last year. Really liked him at the end of that rotation, but he was traded for Spencer Horwitz to the Guardians. How do you feel about that trade? We talk about these 1 to 2 run ball games, not scoring runs, having some excellent outings by the starting rotation, just not being able to cross the finish line. Did you like the Horwitz addition, solidifying that first base spot? Do you think it adds to this lineup?
Well, yeah, I think it does. I think it's a nice job by Ben Cherington in the front office, taking from a surplus, and that's arms, and you go even deeper, right-handed power arms that we have, and making a trade for something that we need. I know there's been a lot of talk about Brian Reynolds going to first base. I don't know how I feel about that, but I know it's been thrown around there, and there's talk about
it's a lot harder than people are just talking about,
it
right?
is.
I mean,
it is.
They told us on Moneyball. Ron Washington told us. I mean,
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. I remember Perry Hill trying to work with Ryan Domit at first base, and just listening to Perry Hill talk about the intricacies of the footwork around the bag. Obviously you have to have your foot on the base when you catch the ball, or it does nobody any good. But it's positioning and angles and stuff like that. There's a lot that goes into playing first base, and getting somebody in Horowitz that has some experience there. I hear there's some thump in the bat, which is nice, having a little bit of power. Haven't seen a ton of him, so I'm not going to speak a whole lot on the swing. Just from what I've heard, there's some thump in there, and having some thump is nice. And hopefully he's a guy that slots in that 4, 5, 6 hole for us.
Yeah, the offense was definitely like we talked about earlier. Like there was a lot of 1-run games. Like we win like half of those.
Mm-hmm.
We have like 85, 86 wins. And do you think this offseason they've done enough to address the offensive problems? And I know like there hasn't been a lot of signings. Like Spencer Horwitz is the biggest addition, but you get Billy Cook coming back after his first cup of coffee. You got Nick York coming back after his first cup of coffee. You got Nick Gonzalez coming off of a big improvement at the plate. Is this a year where some guys, are they betting on guys to make even bigger improvements going into 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pieces are there. I mean, all the names you just rattled off, looking for a rebound year from Key Brian Hayes. Jared Triolo is a guy that I think can play first base and be successful at it defensively. I mean, the guy won the utility Gold Glove for Major League Baseball, so that tells you, defensively he's certainly capable. Jared's another guy that I can't figure out. Like he's a big dude, big, strong-looking dude. So would like to see more thump out of his bat. But yeah, I do. I think the pieces of the puzzle are there. It's obviously the fan base, and it's a sexy thing to go out and sign a big name with a proven track record and pay him some money and stuff like that. I'm no different. Would I like to see it? Of course, I'd like to see it. But I don't think it's necessary for this team to turn a corner. I think if you get a couple of those guys that I mentioned, Key Bryan, Triolo, Brian Reynolds, stay who he is, Kutch have a similar year and healthy. O'Neal Cruz, we're forgetting about him. Like last year was his first year after a major lower leg injury. He's got that full season under his belt now. Maybe he's more comfortable and there's a lot more production there out of O'Neal. It's just for guys just coming to the big leagues, having that expectation on their back can be tough, and having a veteran around that's still doing it at a high level, there can be value for a lot of different reasons. So yeah, would love to see that veteran signing that's 285, 290 hitter with 25, 30 bombs, but it may not happen. And if it doesn't, I think that's okay. The guys that are there just have to go out, play their brand of baseball. And, we're leaning on the pitching one way or another. So let's just score enough to win more games than we lose.
Yeah, there's definitely talent there, and we're obviously counting on some breakout seasons. Scott and I are big Triolo guys. I think there is a lot of pop in that bat, and at the end of the year, he started elevating a little bit more. So there's definitely promise there. But we've also talked on the show about what you just said. Like there's no sexy signings. They're not going to bring in any long-term contracts that we know of at this moment, but they're able to maybe get the most out of what they have by surrounding those guys with a better coaching staff, or they've made front office moves. And I think two notable moves this offseason, probably you could argue that they're up there with Spencer Horwitz, is the addition of Matt Haig and Brent Strahm. What does a new hitting coach and a new pitching coach do for this team going into the year, and then possibly getting something out of a Henry Davis or Jack Sawinski or an Andy Rodriguez coming back off injury?
Yeah, I think there's value there. I really do. So much of coaching at the big league level, you don't get to the big leagues if you don't know who you are, right? If you don't know what your swing is, if you don't know physically how you pitch. So much of coaching at the big leagues is the psychological side. And, from a guy that's been there and done that, talking to somebody else that's been there and done that, there's value there. They can relate to what you've gone through and what you're currently going through. I think there's a ton of value in that. I've heard so many wonderful things about Strahm. Can't wait to meet him. We may have met in passing my career and his career. I don't recall much interaction, but one of my best friends in not just baseball, but in life is a guy named Brett Campbell, who's a scout with the Mets now, made it to the big leagues with Washington. I grew up with Brett's younger brother, and then we became really close as we got older. Brett thinks the world of Strami. And I put a lot of value in that because Brett doesn't like a whole lot of people. So it's kind of cool when I text him, he's like, "Weren't you talking about Strahm?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's the best. He's made everybody he's ever been around better." It's like, all right, that's what you want to hear. And then obviously the track record is there. I don't know Haig. I listened to his press conference. Liked everything I heard. I hope has an opportunity to connect with these guys and get through to him. I know his reputation, even when he was a player, was he's going to be an unbelievable coach or possibly manager one day. So I'm looking forward to getting to know him a little bit better too. But I do like having some more guys on the staff that have some experience and have kind of been around the block a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like I'm really excited to see Strahm and Skeens geek out over the pitching stuff because even Jared Jones, I mean, all the guys that we have on our staff, I think it'll be extremely beneficial. We see the track record in Houston and Arizona. So really excited for that. But, this division hasn't been a killer over the past couple of years, right? Like Milwaukee has done more with less. The Cubs have kind of been underwhelming. The Reds have kind of spent a little bit more money this offseason. The Cardinals seem to be kind of going towards a decline. What do you think the biggest challenges are for the Pirates in the NL Central this year? Because it feels like it's more open than people would like to say.
Yeah, I think it is. I think the Cubs are probably going to surprise some people, would be my guess. Um, I wouldn't sleep on the Reds either.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to play for Terry Francona. That man knows how to rally men. He's just good at it. So I wouldn't sleep on them. The Brewers doing more with less. Yeah, that's become their MO the last 15, 20 years. And I haven't followed a ton of what the Cardinals have done. Yeah, they're the Cardinals. They
Yeah.
always seem to find a way to be somewhat competitive. But one thing that I prided myself on as a player and really as a person in my personal life is I don't get caught up too much in what everybody else is doing. Let me focus on what I can control and do it the best I can. And I think if the Pirates are going to be successful and they go out and take care of their business, they're going to be just fine.
Absolutely. You gotta control what you can control, right?
Control the controllables. I tell our
Yeah.
kids that all the time. Control the controllables.
Absolutely. Well, there's still some other position battles which I love watching. I know we saw a second base position battle last year going into camp. I think this year right field is wide open. You have Palacios, you have Sawinski, Billy Cook, Nick York could play some outfield. Is there any, do you like the idea of going with a platoon out there with a righty lefty, or do you see them adding in free agency or trade to that position?
I don't know that I see him adding. And I'm not crazy about the platoon thing. I mean, sometimes you have to do that. It goes back to stability in that conversation with the bullpen. I feel like when guys kind of have a good feel as to how they're going to be used or when they're going to be used, they can get into their routine a little more normally. But that's a luxury, and that's a luxury we really haven't had for a while. So, you got to have the talent that takes the job and doesn't let go of it. And all those guys you mentioned. York was. I was excited about that trade when we made it last year. I'm excited to see him get more consistent at bats and kind of see what he can do. I still want to see Jack Sawinski be successful. I mean, the power in that bat, but you've got to have more contact.
Sure.
Defensively, I like him. He kind of want him to be your everyday right fielder. I like having a left-hander in right field for multiple reasons. Being left-handed, going down backhand down the right field line, you're in position to make the throw to second or third, and without having to make a spin and turn your back to the infield. But Palacios, that guy brings a lot of intangibles. His personality in the dugout and in the clubhouse, you love having him around. Cook, Cook did some cool things the last week of the season, and he looks like he has a desire to be there. And he's my guess would be he's going into spring training going, these guys are going to have to beat me out. And he gives you some versatility. He played a little first base at the end of the year last year too. So you could slot him over back and forth. But again, that gets into kind of the platoon conversation and, losing that stability. But it'll be interesting. There's a lot of tough decisions, for the coaching staff and the front office to make through spring training. But at the end of the day, it's up to the players to go out and earn the position. Who wants it better?
Yeah, you talk about stability, and I mentioned before that they have a lot of guys that can play multiple positions, and I think to a point that can work to your advantage, but it can also work to your disadvantage if we're talking about stability. You talked about stability in the bullpen, having guys know when to get ready and what situations that they'll be going out there for. Do you think there is value also in having stability in a lineup? Because that was actually one of the questions that was asked to Shelty at the Q&A at Pirates Fest. They're like, it feels like your lineup switches so often. Do you think you were a pitcher, but do you think, being in the locker room with guys that were position players, do you think they value being in a certain spot every day in the lineup?
I do. I think it's human nature. We want to know what to expect. And when constantly trying to figure out, am I going to hit in the first inning or the second inning, or is there a chance I'm waiting until the third inning to hit? I do think there's value there. Again, that's a luxury. And I understand shifting around a little bit the way that they have, looking for matchups and,
Sure.
performance advantages and stuff like that. But the day we start treating this like a game, a video game on a computer, like we're losing it. Like the human
Sure.
element is everything in this game. Emotions, feelings, how your body feels. How's a guy perform under pressure? Well, pressure is different for each individual. Pressure is what I put on myself. It's internal. What's he dealing with at home in his personal life? Is that affecting his ability to prepare? So like looking at platoons and looking at the numbers, it can't be the end all be all. It's got its place and it's valuable. It's incredibly valuable. But it's got to be a piece of the equation, not the whole thing.
Do you think teams have gotten carried away with platoons just because of how advanced the analytics and data has become nowadays?
It could be. I mean, they all have the same stuff now. So all the teams have the same information. So how much of an advantage do we really have by having all this stuff? Again, it's got its place and it's incredibly valuable, and we have to look at it. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not, but it's got to be a piece of the puzzle, not the whole thing. Is all I'm saying. I mean, when you look at let me think of a guy here like Josh Willingham. Josh Willingham, or no, let's say Brandon Phillips. I think Brandon Phillips hit 680 against me in my career. But if I've got my best stuff that day and he's on the bench and he comes in to pinch hit, it's not guaranteed he's going to be successful, right? And vice versa. I might have my worst stuff and he's having an awful day. Girlfriend broke up with him or whatever it is. I'm just making up a scenario. And he's not feeling it. Even with my worst stuff, I might be successful. Like it all kind of goes into a formula that you have to look at to kind of see the whole picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, absolutely. Speaking of analytics too, like, I mean, you didn't play too long ago, Matt. Like how much has the game changed in that fact from when you played till today?
A ton.
Yeah.
The numbers and the splits, like lefty, righty, looking at track records, one guy against another guy, that was certainly around and very alive during my time. But looking at a swing compared to a spin rate or a stuff, it's just changed quite a bit. Like we would have looked at a guy with a long kind of loopy uppercut swing and we would have tried to match him up against a pitcher that we knew could command the top of the zone with his fastball, as opposed to a sinker ball guy. We knew but now we have all that data and all that information to quantify why we were trying to do that. But it's interesting. I mean, again, it can't be the end all be all because at the end of the day, two human beings have to go out and play against each other, and the pitcher has to execute his pitch. And at the end of the day, if the pitcher executes the right pitch in the right count, he's going to win.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, it's not a guarantee that he's going to lose. The hitter then with a mistake has to execute his swing to be successful.
For sure. Last position question I have or topic I wanted to discuss with you, and I think this might be a good one coming from a pitcher, is consistency at the catcher position, because we had the emergence of Joey Bart last year. I think everyone's assuming that he has that job going into the season, or it's his to lose as long as that bat can stay hot and he can provide that much needed power. But then you also have Endy Rodriguez coming back, who showed a lot of promise behind the plate. They're still looking at Henry Davis as a catcher. And then also you have Jason DeLay in that question as well. How do you see the catching situation playing out? They lost Yasmani Grandal. That was Skeen's guy last year. Like, what's the value for a pitching staff in having a guy that's consistent and can control a game?
Well, I think Joey Bart certainly played his way into deserving of it being his job to lose. Henry Davis, can't give up on Henry Davis. He's your 1-1 a couple of years ago. He's shown signs at the plate and behind the plate of doing some
Yeah.
good things. And, everybody says he works his tail off. So, you got to continue to give him some opportunities to kind of prove that he can be the guy that they thought he was when they drafted him. Indy Rodriguez, again, kind of like Oviedo, coming off of a surgery like that. The catcher throws just as much as the pitcher does, albeit not the same effort level every pitch. But, that could be even harder. All of a sudden, the runner's running, and you got to come up and throw it as hard as you can down to second base. So from a health standpoint, if Indy's swinging it well, like to see him get some at-bats at the DH position. There was talk about him getting some reps at first base, but I wouldn't give up on him as behind the plate. A switch hitting catcher that can catch and throw the way he showed before he got hurt. But I'm kind of a believer of offense is a luxury from the number 2 spot or number 2 position behind the plate. Love Jason DeLay behind the plate. I think Joey Bart showed some growth. Joey's another guy, kind of like Bubba Chandler. I've had Joey since he was 16 here at East Cobb. He used to catch me, believe it or not, when I was rehabbing and trying to come back when he was in high school. Him and Tyler Stevenson.
Small world.
Yeah, so it's been really cool for me to see him have some success at the big leagues and have a front row seat for it with Joey. Pull like crazy for him to see how far he's come personally from being a sophomore, junior in high school and then on through Georgia Tech. But we'll see. I mean, there's talent there with all 4 of the guys you mentioned. Jason catch and throw, kind of how he thinks the pitcher through the game. Would love to see everybody kind of rub off on each other. If people can take some things from Jason and how he controls a ball game with the pitching staff. And, Jason, if Jason can hit a little, that's a darn good backup catcher. And I don't know, there's somebody's left out no matter how you dice it up. You're probably not going to carry 4 guys on a roster that are primarily catchers. But I could see Indy getting some reps at first base. I don't know if they've talked to Henry about playing first base at all. It didn't seem like he was crazy about being in the outfield. It was kind of catcher or bust. I wouldn't mind seeing Joey Bart get some reps at first base as well. This is all assuming Horowitz doesn't do what we hope he does.
Right.
So you've got some options there, but I think Joey has certainly earned the right to be catcher number 1. It's his job to lose. And then that backup position is probably between Jason and Henry. And Indy will be there, that 3rd catcher on the roster, get some games behind the plate, get some reps at first base, get some reps at DH. And, again, get through this year healthy first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. I really loved watching what Joey did coming over from San Francisco after having all that pressure to replace Buster Posey and then kind of being in a much lower pressure situation here in Pittsburgh. So I hope to see him bounce or, redo that this year. But before we end here, Matt, we usually do some quick hitters. My last question before we get into those is that, if the Pirates were to make a surprise run this year into the playoffs, what would need to click for that to happen?
What would need to click? Well, I think
we answered that off and on throughout the episode offensively, but
I mean, I think the easy answer here is the offense.
Mm-hmm.
But again, these are people.
Sure.
The pitching staff, we have a lot of expectation for the pitching staff to be really solid. I see no reason why they're not, but you got to go out and play. They play them for a reason. We haven't handed the Dodgers the 2025 World Series trophy just because they've gone out and signed everybody and their brother.
Right.
You got to play them. So let's assume the pitching staff does what we hope they do. For this Pirates team to really click, the offense has to click.
Absolutely. Let's get into the quick hitters, Matt. These are just real quick, fun questions that we ask all of our guests on the show. Nothing really Pirates related, but just kind of to get to know you a little bit. My first question is, what is your favorite restaurant in Pittsburgh?
Hyde Park.
Hyde
Okay.
Park. Nice.
Nice. Right outside the ballpark there.
Yep.
Who was your favorite team and player growing up?
The Atlanta Braves. Larry Jones.
Larry Jones. Nice.
Great name.
Chipper. You know what? I had a couple of different favorite players. My all-time favorite player was Del Murphy. And then Chipper came onto the scene as the ultimate prospect. I was like 9 or 10 years old. My son goes to school with Chipper's son now, so I've gotten to know him
Nice.
off the field a little bit. But probably Del Murphy first, and then Chipper, Smoltz, Glavin, Maddox, those Braves guys. I was a catcher growing up, so Javi Lopez, but I don't know. I just gave you a bunch of answers. That wasn't quick.
Yeah. You might have answered this already, actually, but who is the toughest hitter that you faced in your career?
Oh gosh, I got to pick one.
I mean, you brought up Brandon Phillips earlier, so I mean that could be the answer. Yeah,
Brandon Phillips definitely had my number. So did Moises Alou. So did Josh Willingham.
Oh.
It's funny. Like I faced a lot of guys. My wife's over here saying somebody. Who'd you say? Lance Berkman. Yeah, I can't forget about him.
I mean, Lance Berkman. I mean, it's
yeah. I think.
I love that your wife remembers that. That's
she's like, he owned you. Oh, good. But I mean, I faced a lot of great hitters. Derek Jeter, Jim Thome, Albert Pujols, Ichiro. I was on a radio show with Jason Mackey the other day, and I only remembered facing Ichiro once. And that was my first game in Minnesota the day I got traded over, or the day after, I guess, but my first day in Minnesota. And I got him out to end the ball game to get the save, day one. And that's the only time I remember facing him. Turns out I faced him 5 times, and he was 0 for 5 with either 2 or 3 strikeouts.
Nice.
But I faced a lot of good hitters. Brandon Phillips definitely had my number the most. Lance Berkman, smaller sample size, Willingham, smaller sample size, but Scott Rowland, there were some guys that I struggled against.
How about some hobbies outside of baseball?
Right now, that's tough. My son's about to turn 13. He's in baseball.
Oh, wow.
So we're right in the thick of travel baseball down here in Atlanta.
Sure.
I've been on the ball field from 11:30 to what time did I call you guys? 8.
right.
So I've been on the ball field all day today. We like golf. We like to fish. My daughter is a cheerleader and dancer. So I like
Nice.
going to watch her cheer and do the dancing. And she used to ride horses. So I used to be a horse dad.
There you go.
I can't tell if she's listening. Kind of glad those days are over.
We won't clip that part.
She heard me. She just yelled how rude. So, but yeah, I mean, sports are in my blood. Sports is what I love. I do some dabbling in real estate. So I guess
Cool.
if I was going to say that could be a hobby.
Yeah. Going back to your playing days, and this is the last quick hitter from me. Did you have any baseball superstitions that stuck with you throughout your career?
No, I wasn't superstitious, just a little stitious.
There you go.
I did have a few. Some of them were quirky. Some are the run of the mill. Like I never stepped on the line.
Yeah,
sure.
I found myself, if I had a bad outing, I would drive to the field a different way the next day.
Okay.
So if it was at home, I would go a different route. And would kind of mix that up. If we were on the road, I'd do something different. I'd go to a different coffee shop or, back in my day, it was frowned upon to take the bus. So you always took a taxi. It was pre-Uber.
Yeah.
So you kind of catch a cab at a different spot at the hotel, or you walk to the field, or if I did walk to the field, I'm going to walk a different route, or, stuff like that.
That might be some content for Adam and I this year. See how many ways we can get to PNC Park from where we live. So
yeah, if it's a bad game, you got to figure out another route.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so last one. What's your favorite baseball movie?
We just watched Bull Durham the other day.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, I watched it Friday night with my kids. Um, I'm a little bit of a romantic though. For Love of the Game is my favorite.
Great movie. Great
Yeah.
movie.
Amazing. Well, Matt, we appreciate you jumping on and talking Buccos with us, and we hope to have you on the show again soon to discuss how things are going on along the season. But hopefully we see you around the park and maybe down at spring training.
Yep, sounds good. I'll be down the first week of March. I'm coming down this year, so early for me.
Perfect. All right. Well, appreciate it, Matt. We'll see you around. If not at spring training, we'll probably see you somewhere this season. Appreciate you coming on and talking Buccos with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Matt.
you guys.
Rockin' 101, shit, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates, or the steak by the plates. And